Greetings, everybody. This is Ham Radio Perspectives, and I'm Quin, K8QS.
And I am Tom, W89TDD.
And we are both users of the ICOM 7300, along with some 100,000 other hams around the world. At least that's the number that I've seen, over 100,000 sold. And of course, now we have the new IC-7300 Mark II. And the question that we're asking is, should we buy the new IC-7300 Mark II? We're going to give an analysis here, but beware, because Tom and I have no standing with the manufacturing committees around the world. They are not going to send us a 7300 in advance to review. Just not going to happen. I asked them for some other rig a while back, and the official word was they don't send out review rigs. And in fact, now we see a bunch of people out there doing reviews of the Mark II, so I don't know what the real scoop is. But we're basing it on what we've read, the reviews that we've gone through. We've done our own kind of meta-analysis of this, and we've included some information about the original 7300 that people haven't much talked about in terms of the difference with the new 7300 Mark II. So we think we're making a contribution here, given the fact that we're looking at about, right now anyway, $1,500 or so, Tom, for a Mark II, and about $900 for the original 7300, which we both love and use all the time. And then, of course, if you bought a used 7300 right now, you may get one for $650 or $700 in that range. So these are all things to consider. Is it worth that much more? Or are you just trying to go along with the crowd or whatever? So we'll go through this and tell you what we think. Tom, you pick it up first.
Okay, well, performance-wise, the 7300 Mark II claims that it has better receiver dynamic range and phase noise and cleaner reception. And from my viewpoint, as I am mostly a digital operator, none of that makes any difference to me. I mean, digital is all either weak signal or basically low dynamic range sound. So performance-wise, I have to say, not affecting me at all.
All right.
I'd be,
let me talk about it from a guy who does sideband and CW.
Yeah. What's your opinion?
Well, first of all, I don't have any problem with the 7300 as is on CW and sideband in terms of this kind of performance issue we're talking about. So other issues we'll bring up in a minute that I do have some concerns about, probably for both of the rigs. But in any case, I think there's some marginal benefit here if you're really into contesting and you want to be able to notch out stations on either side, or you want it to sound a little better. But here, I'll be honest, from the time that I bought the original 7300 until today, I have used a outboard speaker, an old, I think it's a Realistic from Radio Shack speaker that really sounds great, because I never liked the sound on the speaker for sideband. And with CW, I would always use headphones anyway. So I don't know that this better receiver dynamic range would make a difference for me. The videos I've looked at where people have done the comparisons, it's very marginal. And for me, as an average everyday operator, it wouldn't make much difference. Now, number two that we're going to talk about, which people, for the most part, are not bringing up, is the issue of the noise of the fan in the original IC-7300. As soon as I got the 7300 about 10 years ago, and I would go to transmit, that fan would click on in the back, and it was loud. I hated it. I have very good hearing, and I hate being distracted by noise. I didn't want to wear headphones all the time, so I pulled the fan out, and I bought a fan online that had low noise and put it in, and that solved that problem for me. And I have read some reviews online saying that the new fan is quieter. Clearly, they listened to hams on that one, because that was one of the big complaints early on. So thumbs up. I would not buy a new Mark II just to get the quiet fan, when I think I paid probably $6 or something on eBay to get a fan that's quiet. What about connectivity, Tom?
Connectivity. An HDMI port for external screens. Actually, that's not a bad idea. especially when I'm doing digital modes and I'm using my computer monitor. It would be nice sometimes to be able to just set a little bit larger monitor over the radio and be able to view it that way. Depending on how far distance I am from the radio. So that's not a bad idea. USB Type C replacing Type B. Well, duh. Everybody's going to Type C now. I think that's going to be the standard for quite a while, because not only because a Type C carry data, it also carries voltage. So I think that's a big improvement there, going to the Type C USB.
Yeah, let me say one thing about that, Tom, that I noticed with the original 7300 too, and with other electronic stuff. The quality you have of an adapter to go from Type B to Type C. The quality of that adapter is really, really important. And most of the cheap adapters out there, if you were trying to use one, going from B to C, often those suckers don't work, even with phones, I find. So I think that's a good move.
Right. And the Mark II also has a built-in LAN for connecting to your, I would imagine you connect to your router.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't see the point of it, but for remote operations, and I know, Quinn, you want to operate remote, that's probably a darn good idea. So what's your take on that?
Yes, I like it. I like having that Ethernet port there to go right into the router. Unfortunately, I would have to relocate my modem router from where I have it in the house now to the shack itself and then plug it in there. I don't have wired, the home is too old to have wiring in the walls and so forth, but most homes didn't have that anyway. I like it for remote operation, easy, using whatever apps would be available, ICOM or otherwise, for remote. I think it's a good improvement, and I wish they had put it in the one that I have now. Would I buy a Mark II just for that? I don't know, Tom, one way or the other, but it is an upgrade. Next would be the CW feature. Now, this is an interesting point here. I wondered why they didn't have a CW decoder in the original 7300. Because it seems to me the 7300 would be aimed at a lot of people who are not heavy-duty CW operators, and they would like a decoder. A real hot CW operator wouldn't care one way or another whether or not the rig has got a decoder, and I would put myself in that category too. I've won CW contests over the years at some hamfests and all. I'm good at it. I can read high speed automatically. But there's some benefit here. We're not talking about a real expensive rig, so putting it in there, it's good. It appears from the reviews that it works pretty well. I think that's great. One problem, though, that I always had with CW on the 7300 was the relay, the transmit receive relay. When you do a QSK, high speed break-in, not a real slow semi break-in, but fast break-in on a 7300, that doggone relay would click, 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 click. And I haven't heard whether or not the Mark II has fixed that. For me, that's an important consideration, although I temporarily have solved the problem with the original 7300 by getting a bunch of the clay-like stuff, that you form, and I put it on the relay. And you use it to hang stuff on the wall and all that kind of clay. And I put it on the relay, and that quieted it down, so it wasn't as bad. But I think it's an upgrade. What about this antenna flexibility stuff, Tom?
Yeah, what about it? It has SMA connectors, and unless you're connecting an outboard SDR, or possibly you're wanting to feed the IF into some other device, I really don't see the attraction to that. What I do notice, though, is it only has a single SO239 on back. And I wish they would have included either an additional SO239 or eliminated the SMA for an additional SO239. The rig is capable of HF plus 6 meters. So it would be nice to have a coaxial connection for a dedicated 6-meter antenna rather than using a single SO239 to connect a single antenna line to, a switch. Have it internally switchable between the two ports. I know my Kenwood TS480 had two antenna SO239s where you could switch between two antennas. So I really don't get the connection between the SMA connectors and the lack of a second SO239.
Okay, so yeah, that probably has to do with keeping most of the parts the same size of the case and everything else. They did what they could. Now, I have in my 7300 Mark I installed one of these things that allows you to connect a second receive antenna. And a little module, I can't remember who made it, but it's pretty easy to install. And so, and it's the same kind of thing with an RCA out. And I used it for receive with a loop antenna, Tom. I had about 180, 200 foot loop out back here because at that time I was getting such bad noise from neighbors, LEDs or whatever. So I put that out and had it connected. And that was, I think maybe I paid $130 or something to have that. So it is a feature that has some value for receive antennas, for filters, for preamps and so on. And I think some people will use it. Now, here's an interesting point about this rig that I really like, and that is the efficiency of it. I don't know exactly how they did this, but there's reduce receive standby current. They say about 23% or about a quarter of the current is lower and lower heat for better battery life. For people who take the rig out in the field, that's a great idea. And the 7300 is a rig that you can easily pick up. It's small enough, take it out in the field. I'm glad they did that. I think that the people would be more inclined to use it in the field that way. So the efficiency improvement is good, but it's not enough, and I don't do enough POTA or any of that kind of stuff that I would buy a Mark II just for that.
So, well, how about the display? They say they improved the color display for better viewing angles. I've heard that's not so much true.
Well,
and detail. Huh?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Tom. So one of the features that they claim is this improved IPS color display for better viewing angles and detail. Yet, if you go to eHAM and you read the reviews of people who have somehow gotten these preview copies, test copies, there's some talk there about the fact that when you get off to the side a little bit with the new screen looks great when you're right in front of it. And it looks higher res, they say, but when you get off to the side a little bit and you start to look at that screen, then you can't see it as well. So they improved one thing, and apparently it caused some other problem as well. Now, again, these are reports from people, and we don't have the actual rig to use, but it seems to me that this may not be as much of a benefit, particularly since you can plug in an external screen, right?
Right.
With an HDMI. I don't know what the big deal is in trying to improve that screen. And at a Hamfest, you can buy an external screen for about $25, and put it into the rig. That's my take on it. Is this enough of an improvement for you, do you think, Tom?
Well, you had mentioned taking the rig out and going portable with it.
Oh, okay.
Now, is that screen give enough definition that if you're sitting at a park bench or on a beach, is it going to be visible in daylight? And more than likely not. So there isn't a real advantage there in any event. Potentially, maybe a larger display. You're certainly not going to be carrying an additional monitor with you when you're sitting on the beach under an umbrella, sipping on a pina colada and trying to play ham radio. So maybe
that's a good point.
Maybe there was an option of changing it to a black and white screen, so you had some better visual differentiation between what's on there rather than a color screen. But I know when I have a cell phone out in the daylight, I can't see anything. So
Yeah,
there could be some improvement there.
let's hope that this is significantly better for those that are out in where there's a lot of ambient light. I've not seen that in the reviews much yet. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the remote control possibilities here. And I think this is a reason why, if not the major reason why, people will buy the Mark II if they are hoping to operate remotely. They've got a nice home station with a nice antenna. They want a 7300 hooked up. They want full featured remote control through the internet without having to go through a PC, and using software on their phone or on a PC in the location where they're visiting or away from home or a second home. It seems to me this is a good move on their part to do this. I wish personally that all the rigs coming out would include that. So there you go, gang. This is our take on it. Again, without having used the rig, we admit that. Please don't be critical of us for not being able to get a copy. We cannot get a copy to review, but we have looked at a lot of the reviews and talked this over in terms of how we use our original 7300s, which we love. And so, Tom, let's do a thumbs up or thumbs down. Thumbs up is we would be willing to pay the amount right now, $1,500, to upgrade. Thumbs down is we would not. Okay. All right. So neither of us is ready yet. Now, if they drop the price down to $1,100 and I can sell off my original 7300 for $700 and then sell the packaging as you talked about
Right,
on another for $150, maybe we got a deal here. So that's our take. Should you buy the new IC-7300 Mark II? And those of you who get them and want to test it out and put some comments down below, please do so. Let us know what you think. And if you want to try to convince us without sending us the money to buy a new one, we'll consider that as well. So please remember to subscribe to the channel. We need a few more subscribers. I think they hit 4,000, something like that. So we're on a roll. This is Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Quin, K8QS.
I'm Tom, W89TDD.
7-3, everybody. Thanks for watching.